So imagine you wake up in a psychiatric hospital,
Okay.
but you're not insane. You're normal. You've just woken up there.
Oh, okay, and I have to prove to them that I'm sane.
Right. Do you think you could do that?
I don't think so.
I think the issue with you is you're actually insane.
That's the problem. So I think probably I actually belong there.
Yeah, to be
So
fair.
I think it would be hard for me to prove, because what even is sanity when you think about it?
Well, I mean, now, girl, you're getting deep. You're getting deep already.
Okay, sorry. I went
Yeah.
deep. I love DMC.
She doesn't. That's a crazy thing. In 1973, this is what my boy David Rosenhan done. He wanted to see if you could go into a psychiatric ward being a normal, sane person, and if they could really see if you was actually insane or not. I just want to dive in first to get you to know David, okay? His early career, we're getting into the gist of things. So this guy was a nerd, okay? He was somebody that collected 3 degrees in 10 years, okay? He had a bachelor's in mathematics, then he got a master's degree in economics, then he got a PhD in psychology, all in a 10-year period. I am 26, I have 0 degrees. This guy got 3 degrees in 10 years, okay? He's just given them out degree. His thesis was about some perceptual correlations of anxiety. So basically, he was trying to talk about how anxiety changes the way we perceive the world, right? How mental, I don't want to say illnesses, but how mental distortions can affect how you see the world and how you act into the world. So from early on, he was already tapping into how the mind can twist your reality, and how, depending on how you're feeling, it can twist how you actually see the world, how you respond to the world. So before we even get into the study itself, which is honestly such a juicy study, I had to bring this for our first psych check. In fact, I gotta even introduce what the hell we're doing here. Guys, welcome. My name is Bella. This is one of my passion projects. It's called Psychiatric. I'm obsessed with psychology. As you just heard, I have 0 degrees. I am a college dropout. Before I dropped out of college, I was studying psychology. I studied psychology in school. I got an A, okay, period. It's not a degree, but I did get an A in my GCSE psychology course. I am just fascinated with psychology, and it's something that I love to talk about. So I wanted to bring you some psychology studies that are absolutely friggin' insane, and I just thought I'd bring it to the general population, because right now I'm in my era of being disgustingly educated. So I wanted to share some education with you as well, while keeping things cute and casual with my little buzzball over here, if you can see, if you're watching on YouTube. Okay, so let's get into psychology, where the world was at the time when this study was done, and how psychology was viewed at the time of this study as well. So to understand psychology, scientists at the time did not rate psychology. They said, if you cannot test that shit in a lab, it's not real, it's just vibes. They was basically saying psychology is philosophy. It's just vibes. There's no way to prove things, there's no way to study things and come up with a way that you can repeat the study, get the same results or get different results. It's just not legit. So in 1879, this is when psychology was officially seen as a proper science, okay? So this Wilhelm Wundt guy in Germany, he set up the first psychology experiment with a lab. So he was trying to study the brain, reaction times, etc. in a scientific way, because he wanted to say, listen, psychology is not just vibes, you can also do experiments just like you would with physics and chemistry. So this is when it was really first seen as a real legit science, but scientists were still kind of like, no, this is just, you know, people just trying to think about stuff. You're trying to be philosophers, and we are scientists. We need facts, we need numbers, okay, we need studies. So at this time, this is where psychology first started, and then you have all these different schools of thought, okay? So it starts with behaviorism, and then we go into psychoanalysis, which I'm not going to get into, but then the mid-1900s, so now we're at the 50s and 60s, this is where you have the rise of cognitive psychology, clinical psychiatry, and basically all of these schools of thought were claiming that their way of psychology is the way to study psychology. Like, this is how you blend psychology and science together. This is the right way that psychology should be looked at, okay? Everybody's just arguing to be that girl when it comes to psychology. So this is in the 50s and 60s. Now, this study was done in the 70s, okay? Psychology has been around for 100 years now, but psychiatry, everybody was still side-eyeing psychiatry, because they was like, listen, psychiatry ain't nothing but some people in lab coats just telling you you're insane or you're not insane. There's no basis behind it. It's literally just down to personal opinion, which obviously can be very dangerous, because, you know, if you just walked into somewhere and there's no real scientific way to see if you're insane or not, it's just down to whoever was your doctor that day or whoever was your clinician that day, you know, it can get a little bit techie. Rosenhan was trying to do was say, if psychiatry and psychology are sciences, then why can't y'all niggas reliably tell who is insane and who is not insane? Because if it's a science, you should be able to do that, right? Because that's the thing about science. It's factual. You can say, okay, if you do this and this, you're going to get this result. If you do that and that, you're going to get this result. But he's saying, you guys aren't reliable. We can't rely on you. So let me do this study to find out. So this is where psychology was at the time. Let's get back to Rosenhan. He was a professor at Stanford. Before Stanford, he was a professor at Swarthmore. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Swarthmore? You ever heard of that university?
Where is it?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, so Swarthmore. He was a professor at Princeton, at Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, which are all Ivy League colleges, okay? Ivy League. He was a baddie. He was a nerd, okay, guys? So when he was actually working at Stanford, I think until he retired, so he started working there in the early 70s until he retired, which I believe was like the late 90s, he was professing, can I say professing 2 subjects?
Professing?
Teaching?
Yeah, I think teaching is better. Professing is like, I profess my love to you.
Profess my love.
Okay,
Yeah,
so...
It's not love. He was teaching psychology and law, okay, at Stanford University. So again, this guy was a real... I'm just getting you guys to understand how much of a nerd this guy was. And also, mixing psychology and law together, the reason why I think kind of he was doing the both is because he wanted to tap into how human judgment can be affected by authority, perception, bias, and how that can shape people's decisions, right? Because, you know, if you go into... Well, I wouldn't know because I've never been to court. But if you go to court... There is so much bias in the court system. If you're a pretty girl and you look put together, people are going to kind of believe you more than if you walk in looking like a homeless man, right? That's why usually when people go to court, they either make themselves look more crazy if they're trying to plead like an insanity plea, or they make themselves look put together so the jury can believe them, right? So there's a lot of things that affect people's decision making and authority itself, right? If somebody who is in an authority position tells you something, I mean, not you, Mammy, but...
Dry.
Right. If someone in an authority position tells you something, you're more likely to listen.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a park and someone in a high-vis jacket comes up to you and tells you, you can't sit here, you're going to be like, oh, okay, and move on. Again, not you, Mammy, but normal people. People, sane people, right? But if a normal person just comes up to you sitting in the park telling you can't sit there,
I'm
you're
gonna
going
be
to be
like, what the hell?
Right,
Get the
exactly.
fuck out of my face.
So he was already into researching that and just getting into how these things affect people's decision making. This is an era where psychiatry relied more on personal observation than on hard science itself. And honestly, I'd be interested to know how much that has really changed, because I still feel like psychiatry is from observation. Bammy, you are, if you don't mind, diagnosed with ADHD.
Okay, well, you didn't confirm before.
Well, we can edit it out if you're not happy with the disclosure.
I am confirmed.
But you're diagnosed with ADHD. Was it just based on observation, or do you feel like there was more science, or like, you know, how do you feel like that went? Do you feel like they just kind of looked at your life or looked into your life and made the decision?
Yeah, I feel like they asked questions and I gave answers, and it was like on a scale. Mm-hmm. And then based on that, they're like, yeah, you've got that shit.
Right. So I still don't think that it's that much more scientifically done. Maybe with certain types of mental illnesses.
Yeah, maybe the questions are more scientific now, but...
Right, but even so, people can still lie, right? Like, especially if you're trying to use it to your advantage. Like, if you need this medical diagnosis to either get out of a jail sentence, to plead insanity, or whatever it may be, it's still based on how that person feels you're answering the question. So why this can be dangerous, obviously, is because these decisions are big decisions. Like, this is, like, if you are going into a psychiatric ward and somebody looks at you, their decision could be the decision that determines whether you are locked up in a straitjacket, whether you are dismissed, whether you are labeled as crazy, or whether you are just set free. Okay, so these are pretty big decisions to just be based off vibes, or just to be based on human opinion, which of course there's a lot of human error in the world, all right? So there's already a lot of issues around this, and he just wanted to tap into that. He wasn't just doing a study for vibes. He was saying, listen, if you guys are saying this is a science, let's make sure it's a science. Show me, prove it, show me what you got. So at the time, you had this growing anti-psychiatry movement going on in America. All right, this is the 70s, okay? Not only were people starting to look up at the government and question authority and question everything that was going on, which again, I feel like we're in the same position now in 2025, which is a bit scary as I'm going through it now. But there was this anti-psychiatry movement where people were like, no, you guys are just lab coats, especially at that time. There wasn't this love for mental health. Back in the 70s, you was labeled as a schizo person or as a crazy person. It wasn't a good label. It wasn't embracing mental health. It wasn't, you know, positive. It was a bad thing. So it was kind of like, you're given this label, you're pushed to the side in the mental bin, and that's it. That's not how I feel, guys. But this is the time of America that we're in the 70s. Not only this, there's also a lot of civil rights movements going on. A lot of social change. You've got the Black Panthers putting up change. You've got anti-war protests going on, okay? People are questioning authority and institutions. So this is where the world was at the time of this study. So when he done this study, the people were ready to back him because they were ready to be like, yeah, you guys are full of shit. None of this is real. All of this is vibes. We want some real things going on. Not only this, but also the care and state of these psychiatric wards at the time, terrible. The conditions, terrible. They were overpopulated. There was no patient control. Once you were in, you basically couldn't say or do anything to get yourself out. So this is where the world was at the time of this study. Now let's get into the study itself. Let's get into the meat of it. He wanted to see if they could tell the difference between someone being sane, someone being insane.
Okay.
He sent in 8 pseudo patients, including himself.
So what does pseudo mean?
Pseudo is fake, right? So he sent in fake patients, sent in 8 of those. 3 of them were women, 5 of them were men. And not all of them were professionals as well. He sent in, obviously he went in himself, he's a psychologist, professor, a nerd. But there was also an artist, a graduate. He even sent in a housewife in there, okay? To really switch things up, right? So there was a mix of professionals in there and all of them were perfectly mentally healthy before going into the study.
Okay.
So when they go into the hospital, they say they're hearing voices. Now, what he told them to say was very specific. He told them to say that they heard the words empty, hollow, and thud. So you go into this psychiatric ward and you're like, I'm hearing voices. I'm hearing hollow, empty, thud, repeatedly in my brain. Yeah? The reason why he chose these words is because they are just enough. Yes. So he chose these words because they didn't have strong psychiatric meaning, right? But they
there doesn't mean anything like crazy.
Right. But they was just enough to make them question something. But they wasn't, you know, too much to be like, okay, yeah, we're looking you up straight away. Okay, so just enough to get them in there. But besides that, everything else, they kept true. Their lives, their jobs, everything like that, they didn't lie about. I think they just kind of disguised their names for privacy, whatever. But besides that, that's all they said to get in there. Now, once they got in there, they started acting normal. They didn't continue with these voices, etc. and things like that. Now, the gag is...
What's the gag?
Their normal behavior was interpreted as symptoms of insanity.
Oh.
So when they're in there, right, they're taking notes of everything that they're seeing, that they're observing. This was taken by the...
as being insane?
Right, of compulsive note-taking behavior.
Okay.
Them being curious and trying to ask questions to the patients, to the psychiatrist, excessive questioning. Them literally just existing is seen as pathological, okay?
What?
Every single one of the pseudo patients got diagnosed with schizophrenia, besides one who was labeled as a manic depressive.
Okay,
I don't know what was going on in his life, but everybody else was labeled as a schizophrenic in this study. They stayed between 7 and 52 days, all right, averaging 19 days. So imagine you go into this psychiatric ward, you are completely normal, and the longest a person had to stay in there was 52 days. Okay?
What?
Nearly 2 months in this psychiatric hospital as a completely sane person, right?
I wonder if they liked it.
I'd love to find out. We're going to get into that further.
Okay.
Right? So the thing is that even when they were discharged, they was discharged of a schizophrenic in remission. Okay. So they still had the label. They
schiz.
Yeah, they basically said, you're schizophrenic, but right now you're not. Mm-hmm. Right now you're clear. But, you know, it could come back at any time. So their label wasn't clear. And I think the thing about mental illness is that the label stays with you forever. You know, like if you have a physical illness, right?
You can be healed.
Right. You go to the hospital, you get better. You don't have that illness anymore. That illness isn't labeled to your identity. But I feel like when you have a mental illness, especially in the 70s, they're like, oh no, baby, if you're schizophrenic, you're schizophrenic. Like, ain't nobody trying to bother you. Ain't nobody trying to work with you because you was a girl that was in the mental asylum. Okay, that's how things were at this time. Another gag. None of the staff members realized that these patients were fake. Let's take it deeper. The other patients in the hospital realized that they was fake. The people in the hospital that were actually insane were like, you're not crazy.
How?
Because they're crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So they could see them acting normal, right? So they thought that they were psychologists or journalists trying to do work on the hospital. They were like, y'all niggas ain't crazy. Meanwhile, staff were only speaking to these people for an average of under 7 minutes a day.
That's very low.
7 minutes a day. It's 0.5% of your day.
Oh, maths!
Cheeky maths.
Go girl!
She's a nerd. I'm not gonna lie, I got ChatGPT to work that out for me, but we move. But 7 minutes of the day, like you label someone as schizophrenic and you ain't even talking to them to continue to find out what is actually going on, right? So no wonder why these patients are trying to talk to everybody else, because they're only getting spoken to for 0.5% of the day at max. So when this study comes out, the hospitals are like, the prestigious hospitals are like, that can never happen in our hospital. Like, you know, this hospital is just a bad hospital. They're underfunded, they're overcrowded. That could never be us. That could never be me. So he said, bet. Rosenhan said, bet. Let me match you. He said, over the next few months, I'm going to send in some pseudo patients to your hospital. And you let me know who you think is fake and who you don't think is fake. So this is kind of like a follow-up study. So he told a prestigious hospital, like I said, I'm going to send in some fake patients. You're going to tell me out of those patients who is fake, who is not. So out of 193 patients, they came back and flagged 41 patients, or at least one staff member said, I don't think they're real. I don't think they're legit. Here's the gag.
What?
He didn't send in any fake patients.
They were all real.
They were all real. So he double homicide.
Why?
Because not only did you flop the first experiment of him sending in pseudo patients and them not realizing,
now
he then said, right, cool, you think you'll be able to work it out? You think you can really figure out who's sane and insane? I'm going to send in some pseudo patients. He didn't send in none. They came back saying 41 of them were fake. None of them were fake.
What do you mean 41? I thought you only sent in 8.
No, so this is a follow-up study. So after that, he was saying, I'm going to send in some pseudo patients, some fake patients. You let me know how many are fake. So in the course of the 3 months that they have this follow-up study, there's 193 patients. They flagged 41
and
were fake.
Why would 141 people go in and be fake?
No, these are just patients that got admitted to the hospital.
Oh, okay.
So out of that number, they came back and said 41 of these people were fake. They're not real. And he said, gotcha! None of them were fake patients. So you're just dumb, okay? You just don't know what you're talking about. Now, obviously, this is a friggin' issue, okay? Because, like I said, these people are trying to say psychiatry is a science, all right? This is not just based on observation. This is not just smart people in lab coats telling people that they're insane or they're not insane. This is a science. We can tell who is insane and who is not insane. And he proved twice, no the fuck you cannot, all right? Let's get into the aftermath of this study. Things get a little messy because you've got some critics, obviously, okay? So there was a guy called Robert Spitzer. Robert Spitzer, he said, your study didn't prove anything because the doctors were deliberately deceived, okay? So he's saying, you told them that you were sending in fake patients, you deceived them, you didn't send in fake patients, so how is that fair? But I mean, that can only really apply to the follow-up study because it's like, bruh, the first time no one was deceived, the first time they was meant to be doing their job, and they didn't realize these people were fake. And even so, if you're saying this is a science and you can tell who's insane and not insane, why did you say that these people were lying?
And why did you get it wrong?
And why did you get it wrong?
Like, so, if you really knew, then
you'd know, right? Then you'd know, okay, no, these people are all real, and it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. But no, that was not the case of this study. Now, like I said, I think the point still stands because if you're claiming that you can tell who is sane and who is not sane, then you should be able to tell, right? Mm-hmm. Now later, this was done in 2019. A babe called Susanna, and let me try and not mess up this name, Susanna Cahalan. Okay, 2019. She wrote a book. She said she called it The Great Pretender. So she tried to track down these pseudo patients in 2019. And she couldn't track a lot of them. And she basically said a lot of the results were exaggerated or made up, right? Who's to say that's true? Who's to say that's not true? But I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? Like, they sent in fake patients. They wasn't able to see the patients. They said, no, that's just specific to that hospital. We'll be able to figure it out. So he said, I'm going to send in patients. They couldn't figure it out. So whether it's exaggerated or not, the facts are still the facts. Like, this is not a science. This is people just making assumptions or labeling people off of their own thoughts, feelings, and observations, okay? There's no science behind it. So, yeah, there's still a lot of controversy, obviously, around the topic. What Rosenhan study really showed the world was that psychiatry can be BS, okay? And honestly, as I was reading this study, I'm thinking, I don't know if that much has changed.
I don't think so.
Right? Like,
I'm not belittling psychiatry, but I do think that a lot of it is BS. And when you have a label put on you, you feel it more. For example, when I first got my ADHD diagnosis, I felt it way more. That was ADHD, and I needed these meds and everything. And then when I ran out of meds and I didn't have them for some time, obviously the ADHD, like, it's still there, but I wasn't as aware of it, you know? So it's kind of like, if you put a label on someone, you're schizophrenic.
They live up to that label.
It enhances the experience.
Yeah, it's like self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's like, if you tell someone they're going to be this person, they're more likely to be that person and ended up being that person.
Yeah.
And I think also, like, especially now in the world where we are so mental health positive, and everybody's got a label, everybody's got a little tism or ism about them, I think it's almost like kind of making excuses for people. You don't need this label to get through life. Like, you can get through life regardless, with or without this label. And the power of labels is so important, because again, when it comes to mental illness, if you get diagnosed with bipolar, it's very hard to get that taken off your record, okay? It's very hard. If you have been labeled as a schizophrenic, the best you'll get is a schizophrenic in remission, right? Bipolar in remission. You're never really going to be cleared off that label. So this is what he was trying to say, that these labels are dangerous. And also, from a psychiatrist's point of view, when the patients are coming in, they're looking at them thinking that they're already crazy because they've come to the clinic. Instead of looking at them like a normal person and saying, okay, is this person really sane? Are they just chatting shit? They're already thinking this person has a label. You just need to figure out the label itself, right? So it just highlighted a lot of issues in the psychiatric world. It turned things upside down. Now, the story about perception, bias, and how fragile the concept of sanity really is, because like you said, what is sanity? What is insanity?
It seems like it's the same thing at this point in this economy.
Who the hell knows, right? And also, who's to say that insanity is going to hold you back in life? Or who's to say that insanity is something that is going to stop you from achieving your goals?
Some of the most successful people are, like, clinically insane.
Right. Or, you know, a bit not all there. And babes, the fuck? Just doing fucking roly-polies, drawing on the fucking board. So maybe insanity is a problem, guys. Maybe we need to lock them up.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry, guys.
Okay, anyway, so Rosenhan study, clearly, like I said, in the 70s, at a time when people are standing up to authority, at a time when there's so much social change going on, it really made people think, is this legit? Is psychiatry specifically something that you can scientifically test and always get right? Or is it really just based on opinion? And I'm not gonna lie, I do feel like a lot of psychology is based on opinion. Is that necessarily a bad thing? I think it's only a bad thing when the people that are making the opinions have an agenda, right? If there is a financial gain for the hospital. For example, I was listening to a podcast the other day where there was a patient in a psychiatric hospital and their family was really rich, willing to basically not care about the patient, not care about their child, just pay for them to be in the psychiatric ward and let the hospital deal with them. And there was an argument of if the hospital is keeping them in there for the funds, or if they was actually insane and needed to be there.
Wow.
Right? Because there's financial gain, right?
Really?
Right. People are underfunded, people are overworked. So what is the agenda behind it? I feel like if you have a lot of discernment and you're really able to be objective with your decision making, is it such a problem? No. But that's not the world we live in, unfortunately. So I want to know, if you woke up in a psychiatric hospital completely sane, do you think you could actually convince someone that you are sane? Or would all the normal things that you do be considered as insanity? Let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed our first episode of the Psych App. We will be back again next week with another study that is gonna make you think. And yeah, thanks guys. Bye.
Thanks.
And cut.